Hello, I'm Philip Stoten. I'm here at Productronica 2017 on the SCOOPstudio, and I'm joined by two gentlemen to discuss the topic of software and layers of software, how the different areas of software join together. I have François from Cogiscan and Kevin from Router Solutions. If I start with you, François, you kind of have this interesting position in the market in terms of what you refer to as middleware. We've talked a lot about standards for machine-to-machine communication and MES, but there's layers in between. How do you see those layers operating?
Yeah, actually there's a wide variety of layers, as you mentioned, because even machine communication, most machine vendors actually have their own software offering, so different modules that can plug around their machine, and so really when you're talking about machine to machine, a lot of times it's software to software, and that's the machine level software, then you have the enterprise level software, and you have everything in between. So it comes down to integration between different systems, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. And you're, as well as having your own software offering, you're also an integrator for the Valor IoT system. How do you see all those different layers stacking up as the products you provide, the domain expertise, the machine-to-machine in the environment you operate in?
Well, absolutely. I mean, our value added is the integration. And when you talk integration, of course, very quickly the discussion turns towards standards, whether it be OML, whether it be OPC. But the standards are simply a nice way of moving the data or looking at the data. Of course, you still need to gather the data, you need to collect it, you need to organize it, you need to make sense of it, and you need to move it up the scale, so to speak, where you can really start getting the benefit from it with statistics and other evaluation tools.
Yeah, and when I look at the, as you say, the machine software, I look at the companies that are working in specific areas. For me, the key there is for them to provide clean, solid, reliable data. So to use their domain expertise to get really good data. Then it comes down to you guys to try and figure out how to manipulate that data. And that requires a lot of really open collaboration. We're starting to see more of that in the industry, I feel.
There's clearly more of that because there's market pressure. So every machine vendor has pressure from their own customers to get into Industry 4.0, provide solutions. Everybody, I think, understands that they won't be able to achieve Industry 4.0 on their own. So they have to collaborate with other vendors. And you're right, there are industry standards that are being proposed and that are evolving right now. And that's a good part of it, but it's not the only part as we mentioned, because you really need a lot of software in between those different pieces to fill gaps and to organize that data and make it available.
Yeah. And when you look at people's software ecosystem, you're normally not starting from a point where they've got no software, so they've got legacy systems. If you are starting from almost a blank canvas, where should you start? Is it a kind of top-down strategy from ERP down through MES, down through the different layers, or should you be getting the machine communication first and then working your way up? As an integrator, how do you look at that?
Top down, bottom up, they make very nice graphics and they make very nice charts. That doesn't always really reflect reality. The ERP, of course, is always your top level system, but you have just as many interfaces going side to side, so to speak, as going up and down. So it is difficult to say exactly where we start. It really depends on the customer because, as you said, the machines should be producing good data, but they don't always do it. And that's just a reality. It's getting better, no doubt. And as you say, that has a lot to do with industry pressure. Customers are less willing to accept the kind of finger pointing they might have in the past. It just needs to work. Yeah. And as an integrator, we really come in and say, okay, where is the biggest challenge here? Where is the biggest pain point? We address that as our first level.
Yeah, and that's that initial analyzing the situation and working out where you need to get to. So not top down, not bottom up. Is it kind of, for you, is it kind of middle out, or how do you assess it?
I tend to agree with the statement that it depends. Every customer situation is different. In practice, we don't have a lot of green field, so most people already have systems in place, but they have new requirements coming in. So the question is looking at what they have today, where do they need to be, and trying to fill that gap essentially without trying to reinvent the wheel, because existing manufacturing systems take a lot of time to implement, and even if they're not perfectly adequate, at least it's it's in place and it's working. So trying to move all that away to start with a clean sheet of paper is very, very difficult to do. So really it's more pragmatic to say, well, we're going to fill the gaps and put together sort of a roadmap for the future, but really you have to evolve that one step at a time by solving real problems. And as you indicated, is looking what is the highest priority, the pain points, and focusing on that first to provide real value, because Industry 4.0, if it doesn't bring value to your business, then what's the point, right?
Yeah, and when you look at the value they're looking for, Kevin, when they come to you, are they coming to you with just this idea that they want a smart factory, or are they coming to you with, we need to reduce inventory, we need to accelerate throughput? Is there a kind of a sweet spot in terms of need, or is it, again, different every time?
Well, first of all, François, I couldn't agree more. The solution has to fit the requirement. So, you don't want to over-deliver or overdevelop or bring in a solution that is just far more than the problem. Generally speaking, yes, the problem or the pain point, as I would call it, is very clear. The customer does know exactly what they're trying to achieve. So we're seeing fewer just buzzwords, I want a smart factory. No. That a year and a half, yeah. Now it's very much more, we have the following problem. Our inventory is here. We need to reduce it. We have far too many materials in, no man's land, so to speak, stacking up on the line. So, our quotes are taking far too long. We're an EMS company, and we have far too much of a backlog. So it's quite clear usually what they're trying to achieve as a main issue. Now, what they're often not aware of is how many side effects we can address when we achieve the main goal. And part of our goal is to say, look, we do this, you can achieve not just reducing inventory, but you can also improve your parts purchasing process. You can buy better parts, reduce the actual, not just the quantities that you're buying, but also the amount you're paying for. Stop buying so many stickware and buy more on custom reels and things like that.
Yeah, so you can have an impact on the overall business way beyond what they initially assess. The other element to selecting this software and making all the layers work is return on investment and being able to have measurable return on investment. Do you think there's still an issue in the industry of them being able to actually measure changes in performance? Because we've been talking about, I call it smart factory nirvana, for a long, long time. But actually quantifying it seems to be a real challenge.
It used to be a big challenge, and I think it's getting better for the simple reason that as you start collecting data and you can start to calculate KPIs and like basic machine performance, like for example utilization. Is my line running 50% of the time or 20% of the time? It's a good starting point. And if I know I'm running 20% of the time and I can improve that maybe by 10%, I can quantify that very easily. But getting the data is what allows you to make good decisions, right? So it's really hard to measure progress unless you know what is your baseline. So it's kind of the chicken or the egg type of thing. But as you start collecting basic data, it gives you the tools to analyze again where and how much you can improve and to calculate this ROI much more precisely. Yeah.
Last question to both of you. I'll start with Kevin. Over the next 12 months, what do you see in terms of changes going on in terms of that ecosystem and this kind of settling of what's going on in the standards world?
Without doubt, increased usage and compliance with standards. It's such a no-brainer, really. Why should I have 5 different machine formats if I can put it all into one format? Assuming, of course, the format is able to do everything I want. So the formats will continue to get better. There will be more and more standardization on just 2 or 3 basic formats. Customers knowing better and better what they're trying to achieve, being able to measure it better and better, because you're absolutely right. ROI does need to be quantified. One of the nice things about a smart factory is smart data is data that you use smartly. So when the more tools, as you say, it's a chicken and egg or maybe even a snowball effect, the more tools I have to better evaluate the data, the more I can know, did these tools actually justify what I invested in terms of time and money into them? Yeah. So customers know. We had a customer just yesterday come by the booth and say, our OEE has gone up 22% since we implemented your solution. I like that very much because it wasn't around 20%, it was 22%. They had that number on hand, and they wouldn't have had that before.
So if you can't measure the performance of your software, it's hard to measure the performance of your equipment. What about you, François? You see many changes in the coming 12 months?
Definitely. I mean, as you mentioned, the standards is a very interesting field to follow right now, a lot of activity. There are several initiatives that are still evolving in parallel, and I expect that all of them will actually come eventually to be released. I don't expect that only one single standard will be available across the board, and for sure we will have the issue of dealing with legacy equipment for quite a long time, because typically, even if there's a new standard that's released, let's say a year from now, the vendors maybe support that on the newer machines, but probably not go back to the older machines. So there's still a lot of work to be done even before we get the standards released. But regardless, all of these initiatives will make the solutions more readily available, more affordable, easier to implement, and again, it will be a snowball effect, as you mentioned. So we do expect a lot of progress. Yeah.
And as they do that, they become more sophisticated, they deliver more value. So good times ahead for software providers, it seems. Guys, thanks very much for stopping by, and thanks very much for talking. Thank you.